Welcome back, Sean.
Welcome back, Dan. I feel like it's been a year.
Exactly. I think both of us are going through some very separate, not alike, but equally tumultuous firestorms in our professional lives, and so the podcast is taking a back seat. But it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while. Hopefully, we can get back into a groove here. It's been I don't know if
Call
it's
it summer break,
yeah. I was gonna say summer
even though it
break.
doesn't
Like
feel like it for
it
us.
doesn't feel like it. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it was a break at all. I feel like I worked. I mean, it's been an insane amount of work the last
Ragged.
4
Yeah.
weeks. So a summer break in terms of hobbies.
You mean
Summer.
you mean the hobby of having your laptop out on the couch on a Saturday afternoon working?
Yeah, that one
Yeah,
exactly.
that
That's
one.
that's been my several of the last Saturdays and Sundays, honestly. So good to be here.
Well, we can all take a deep breath together and just soak up everything that is the news cycle and the constant changes and tumultuous environment that is causing, to some degree, both of us to have professional strife, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, to catch our well, I mean, how much do we want to catch our listeners up here, Dan? That's a
I don't
question I
think it's
was.
worth doing because it'll make the episode too timely. I think
Yeah,
more it's
so
just like we've got it's sort of like,
I meant more about us, not about like everything that's happened. But yeah, no,
I
I know what
see.
you mean. Either way, I didn't know how.
I don't think it's worth digging into. Let's just leave it.
No.
It's rough.
Okay.
We all have these periods, and let's both sort of forecast and pontificate about rest of year. And I don't
What's
know if you
even
want to call them
happening?
coping strategies or goal sessions or what, but like try to talk about how we're doing our best to be, not only like effective and on top of what we do, but also remaining positive.
Yeah, yeah. Remaining positive is maybe the hard one right now. It's not. I shouldn't say the hard one. It's always a challenge, but
Depends on how you're wired, huh?
yeah, I suppose. But lately, it feels like there's been a lot more distractions that could possibly get in your way and prevent you from staying focused on. Well, I mean, honestly, you know what? This is something I was pondering today. Sometimes when you're scrolling Twitter or Instagram or whatever your favorite social media app is, there's people on there posting about how. And I was thinking, what's his name? Chris Williamson? Chris Williams?
Williamson?
Williamson, yeah.
Modern wisdom?
Yeah, modern wisdom. He talks about this and worrying about how there's these people that are floundering or falling behind or worrying about these things in aggregate. But it's never the people that are necessarily in those situations that you hear complaining or talking about. It's always the people that are looking at from an outside perspective and judging it. Maybe we just all need to stop focusing so much outside and focus a little more on our internal selves and our internal groups and the closer community that we can interact and impact, because there's a lot of things to worry about.
Like inviting your neighbor over for dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Start small. I agree with you. I think it's a lot of like, doesn't it lead to more like navel gazing and more? I read a while back. I read this book by Abigail Shrier, and it's called Bad Therapy. And I've really taken to liking the book and the book's message. I think there's some tough stuff in there, but also some stuff that's really reality, stuff that we don't, as a society, like as a Western society, or maybe Americans, I don't know, want to really admit because of, well, it's okay to go get therapy. We want to encourage therapy and so on and so forth. And, she makes the carve out for like, it is necessary. It is a tool that we have. And at times people should seek it out. But like it's like over therapy or over focusing on, like focusing on talking about and encouraging your inner voice to spin around all your problems instead of what you should be doing differently or like forecasting a different future for yourself. That's a weak summary of the book thesis, but I don't know, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people have probably at least gone through a stage in life where they're guilty of it.
I mean, I feel like I certainly am
I
guilty
have,
of it.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So at least I can relate, I think. I don't know how if everybody can, but I can. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, just you're saying like I think there's like or what I'm like what I'm wondering is like this internal view that Shrier is arguing about, and then connecting it with your view of it's like forecast too distant, right? And there's this
Yeah.
middle ground where like we can all be effective and be community driven and make a difference in the world. And if we all did that at the scale with which we have the power to do it, we would vastly improve the human experience on earth versus the like hyper focused on self or the hyper focused on like you can't do a thing, there's nothing you can do, almost nothing. Shouldn't say there's ever nothing, but yeah.
Lately, it feels like there's been a lot of like, yeah, but there's nothing.
Well, there's also this pernicious like feature feeling that like by reading the news and staying informed or scrolling that Twitter feed or whatever, that like you are being responsible with paying attention and you know things. But it kind of goes back to what you're the point you're making of like, does that
What do I can't do anything with it. So I'm worrying about stuff I'm bringing others' worries into my own life.
right? If you had a skill, connection, money, energy, I don't know, there's a litany of words there you could push in whereby you could affect some small change in outcome,
Mm-hmm.
then go for it. But otherwise it's a lot of I don't know. I don't know. I also don't want to put down being knowledgeable about what's going on in the world either. There's a hard like balance to strike there because I
Mm-hmm.
generally I am interested. I will read the news too much, but
Well, yeah, because you're also looking at context clues for what is going on in your own life, right? I mean,
indeed, yeah.
you know, right now I'm following the news closely in terms of certain international business and trade agreements because I want to understand how that is going to impact my day-to-day life. Not that I can do anything about any of the news or that the news is even all that accurate or matters for more than 36 to 72 hours because it changes so frequently. So really, it's like, oh shit, that's bad. Oh wait, no, 48 hours later, oh no, it's fine.
But you
Okay,
do
wait,
have to
but
go
it's
into
still not
work and make
good.
decisions.
But yeah, I have to go into work and make decisions. Like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do because of A, B, and C. And
or we're going to hold status quo because again, this target is moving so fast. No one has the shooting skills to hit it.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I truly think we're going to see more compression of certain domestic manufacturing where it's the stuff that is being made here is going to be only made for only the United States, not for export. Right now, there's a lot of stuff that the United States does export that we don't even think about that, comes here for, either distribution in some cases or for, some last mile, some last bit of assembly or last finishing that then gets exported outside. And because our tariffs are on raw materials, make our end goods cost more here, even if there's no tariffs imposed on the United States in retaliation, in which case, I mean, who knows what's going to happen from other countries. Our stuff is still going to be more expensive than it was. A lot of, end U.S. assembly and distribution is going to probably get pushed outside of the U.S., which will, make us focus more on our core here, I suppose. But it'll be interesting to see.
It'll strengthen the outside. It'll strengthen
yeah,
places
exactly.
other than the United States.
All this is going to do is strengthen everybody else's ties with China and Southeast Asia.
And India.
In India. Yeah, exactly. Which I would consider to be in Southeast Asia, but that's just me. No.
That's South Asia.
Fair. South Asia. Well, I mean, it's all kind of, relative, right? South and east, north and west,
no,
it's just wherever it depends where
Indian
you're standing.
subcontinent.
Yeah, Indian subcontinent.
But before we started recording, you had said something that I think would be useful to share.
Remind me. No, specifically what was I'm seriously punch me in the face here.
No, it's so good. We're gonna be pushing. We're gonna be pushing this manufacture. We're gonna be pushing industry and economy and like things that are important to have in one's country. We're gonna be pushing it out of the United States, or like not inviting it in might be the better way to put it. And then what you were pondering
definitely not inviting it in.
Are we?
And then
are we advancing something that was already in play?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, are we accelerating something that was already going to happen in the next 10, 15 years anyway? So some of this, if you look on the grand time scale, probably doesn't matter because it's pain that was going to happen eventually at some point, because as global manufacturing continues to become more global, and there's sources for everything all over the world.
And labor gets tighter in China and gets more expensive in China. It's going to naturally flow out of China.
It makes more sense to have. There's going to be more things built closer to where they end up being used rather than moved halfway around the world. Because when you think about all the working capital you have tied up in the transit system as it's being transported from one hemisphere to the other, it adds up. So if
certainly does,
large companies can have a little bit more distributed manufacturing, smaller or more geographically based manufacturing they will, I think. And so what some stuff that might have been legacy done in the US and just been here because it always had been is being now moved more quickly because it makes sudden sense to. So it was something that probably would have happened because it was slowly happening over time regardless. But this just gave fuel to the fire to make it, okay, well, now this is the highest ROI activity we can undertake in terms of projects, so we're actually going to do it. Whereas before there might have been 3 or 4 other projects that were more accretive to value than this.
Yeah, well said. So should Intel be nationalized?
Why not? We already have a steel company. Why not a chip company? I mean,
well, it just seems like, this particular party that's in power now, I grew up with being, at least via words, the party of small government, but it is anything but. But we also,
what is it? They were trying to dictate TSM by 47% of Intel or something of that nature. Is that what I saw?
I don't know. I didn't catch that one. All I know is that Intel basically has 2 businesses. One is completely defunct at this point and not needed, and the other one is like not been invested in by Intel. And the whole, the culture, like the way the organization works, is not fit for the future, right? Like they aren't going to be the design shop and manufacture shop who basically has a monopoly on high performance chips.
Mm-hmm.
Because TSMC is a customer service oriented organization, and people come to them with designs and they say, great, we'll make it and we'll turn them out like at this yield. And that's where kind of Intel has to go.
Yeah. Well,
and
because,
are they the organization that can do that?
It doesn't seem that Intel has the IP anymore to design the world's best chips and and building the world's best logic. And how much of TSM's really moat now is their ability to execute on the higher end projects because they were focusing on how to do the actual manufacturing rather than, oh, this is how we're going to design it and figure out the logic flows. Right? I mean, not that I am in no way a semiconductor expert. I'm very...
Yeah, largely you're right? I mean, there's design and manufacturing. And TSMC just went after the manufacturing part, and Intel, much longer history, right? Like mega amazing American innovation driving organization for decades. But the world has changed, and now it's just crazy to me that the American president is like picking a fight over the CEO of the organization, but at the same time, like, can this organization even live? Right. And then comes the question of, oh, it's a strategic resource for defense and, long-term competitiveness. Well, there are times when the market doesn't work the way you need it to if you have a different vision of the future. And perhaps this is one of those times, and you should nationalize Intel. I'm not really making an argument for it. It is an interesting thing to ponder, because you can make a very cogent argument right now that that's what needs to happen. And with him talking about ousting the CEO, it kind of feels like it's already getting that.
Yeah. I think it was CHIPS Act funding kind of tied to TSM's building foundries in the United States, and they were threatening to basically take that funding away if they didn't go and basically buy Intel's foundries. And so then what does Intel become? Because people certainly are going to them for the best chip design at this point. I mean, they have products that are being used widely. We shouldn't say that they're not. But it seems like at that point, it's I don't see how it ever... I mean... Well, no, I don't know. Maybe then they could refocus themselves on something if they were able to focus on and just be like, all right, we're going to try to rebirth ourselves as NVIDIA, right? Effectively, we're out of the manufacturer. We're just worried about
new designs
and coming to market
if they have the talent for it.
12 to 18, yeah, if they have the talent for
also, go through that hard period, which may be like a,
5-10 years,
enormous drop in revenue for 5+ years of saying, we don't support anything that we used to make. Like, it's all going away, and we are putting zero human capital toward everything that we used to make, and 100% of human capital is now geared towards this North Star.
Yeah.
And if they said the right words, the stock would pop.
Well, and then, I mean,
who knows?
Ultimately, then is the idea to make sure that AMD ends up the winner, because then you're going to weigh down TSM with all these bad Intel assets. You're gonna make TSM Intel irrelevant. And so the hope is then that AMD can come in and be like, okay, now we're gonna...
It's our time to shine.
Yeah. They've got an albatross. We're free to fly.
Yeah. I don't know. That's going to be an interesting... Well, that's what we're talking about. It's all very interesting future /
Yeah. Man, I have not been reading much else in the news lately. Is there anything that's piqued your interest, Dan, that's you wanted to chat on, chew over, discuss?
There's a book I started. It's very odd. Well, not odd book. I think it's an undercover book, not well known. And I got it through just having a long, curious chat with ChatGPT. And it came out as a suggestion, and it wasn't on my radar. So it is called With Winning in Mind by Lanny Bassham, who turns out to be an Olympic gold medalist in shooting.
Okay.
He narrates the book, which is great because he's like a good old Texan boy and
Nice.
has just lived a very interesting and I don't know. I mean, he's an Olympic gold medalist. So it's an interesting life, right? But he talks about his mental framework and how he teaches this mental framework to high performers. He's translated it out to business people, but also teaches shooters, archers, other athletes, and stuff like that. And what caught me as it being interesting is, it's funny. I love Prometheus Rising, and I think part of the reason I love it is because of how wacky it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you boil down the message and take the wacky out, it's a lot like what's in this book. You got to bring conscious and subconscious and self-image together. Those are the three sort of like pillars that Lanny talks about. And it's like, if your self-image is, what was one of the examples he used? You're someone trying to learn to bowl or something like that. And you've been practicing in a while and your score is always within 120 and 160. But halfway through the game you're playing today, you're well on your way to scoring 210. But that's way outside of your comfort zone, even though it's better.
Yeah.
And if your self-image is I'm a 120 to 160 bowler,
You'll start to mess up.
You'll make it so, right? And these are the similar topics that we've talked about in the past, but it's like in some ways people would call it self-sabotage. In others, it's just like it's meeting your expectation. You set out an expectation and this is how you're gonna meet it.
There's a lot of comfort in having your expectations melt.
It is very comforting.
Met.
Yeah.
Or melting expectations.
You might be down there. I don't know what the temp is lately. It was here. It was like 90 or, almost 100.
I think that'd be it's kind of a good year, a good description for the year so far. Melting expectations.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people talking about the market melting up or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
It has been on.
And then, so then it goes back to the conscious, subconscious, and basically like, whatever thing you have to be good at or like want to be good at, you've got to get it to the point where your subconscious is good at it. And it's basically autonomic. And then if you bring consciousness into it, it will likely interfere, right? Like if you're trying to not hit a slice, you'll hit a slice. What you want to do is go hit a straight ball down the fairway, right?
And
or not
even think about what you're doing. Really, it's just, right.
You hand a cup of coffee to another example that I really liked that he gave. He's like, we had friends over and my daughter's helping, and I hand my daughter a cup of coffee and I say, "Don't spill it." And of course, what happens, right? Because like you have primed this person with the thought of spilling it rather than keep it all in the cup or something on the positive bent. The goal to be achieved rather than the thing to avoid. And so there's a lot of messaging like that in the book. And, clearly I circle around these topics a lot. I'm trying to fix my own psychology or like, always guardrail it from bad habits or something. But I liked it.
An idea that's been, again, kind of circling back to something I said earlier, about how we worry about others too much. And you just said something about fixing your own psychology. And I was thinking this week about, maybe it shouldn't be so much about fixing your own psychology, but learning how to work with it and learning how to utilize that within the world rather than changing the way you are. Yeah, and say, wait, okay, but no, this is how I am, and I know that I know this truth about myself. And by I'm trying to think of a good example, but I can't come up with one, of course.
That's tricky though, because what if the thing that you were trying to admit to yourself as a reality doesn't need to be a reality?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's not that, but also it doesn't need to change. I think sometimes we think we need to change things about ourselves to feel like we've improved. And it's like, no, we just need to learn how to accept ourselves for, the weird foibles that we have and come up with the best version of ourselves, including those things, like if I know that I have a tendency to run 15 minutes late, I'm going to start booking myself, telling myself the meeting starts 15 minutes early. So that way, by the time I'm getting there on time in my head, it's on time for everybody else or something of that nature. I don't know, and just understanding who you are and then adjusting I guess you could then say, oh, well, then you're working to become punctual. It's like, no, I'm shifting my expectations. I'm not like then all of a sudden at the end of the other meeting where I run over, like cutting myself off, it's I've had that extra 15 minutes to run over, but I don't know. That's a weird example. It's not a great one.
No, I get it. I mean, it's a common example. I just feel like it's a band-aid rather than a fix. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I know. Yeah, that's not really what I was trying to. Yeah, you're right. It's a band-aid. Anyway.
Well, anyway, another tool that he gave was like this 21. I don't remember what he called it, but it's a 21-day affirmation sort of thing. Like, you want to become, a better free thrower or something like that. And he gave rattled a ton of different examples of how to build your 21-day affirmation on that. And it's all process driven. It isn't just like pie in the sky, sort of like, I'm a great free thrower. And I say that to myself 4 times a day for 21 days and I'm fixed. It's more like, I'm a great free thrower because I do 153 throws a day, and then that's your process, and you do that for 21 days. And I think here is part mind shift, like a mind shift with identity dragging along, as well as this process, which hopefully somewhere in that component is deliberate practice.
Yeah, I think the deliberate practice is probably a big part of.
Huge. Yeah. But you also have your identity. You got to move that identity too. You can't be going like, I'm a terrible free thrower and that's why I'm practicing. It's kind of his point. It's like, go there. You're already there. Now do the process. Which reminded me of Robert Anton Wilson a little bit, right?
Yeah,
like,
very much, right? I mean, because you're putting
it.
yourself in the reality tunnel and you're finding your dime or your quarter, rather.
Yep.
Right? You imagine the quarter, you think about the quarter, you imagine what it feels like to pick it up, and then someday there is the quarter. In this case, it's shooting free throws a little bit better, but yes.
Yeah, whatever it is that you're wanting to improve.
There's a lot of people who that would be their jam. They would be happy with just that, or taking 3 strokes off their golf game, or whatever have you.
It's not comforting. It's like me talking about like fixing my inner chatter and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, now I'm applying it to others in my life, and I'm like, you gotta change that. You gotta change it. Only because I don't want my inner voice to be passed down.
Yeah. Is it that you want to control your inner voice, or you just want to quiet it?
No, I would welcome it, but I want to welcome it. So I need to change the nature of its delivery. Is how I would put it.
Is it too mean? Is it too cynical? Is it too? What's wrong with it?
It's not cynical. Yeah, it's demanding and mean, and talks down to you. Mostly, you're a failure and all that good jazz. You're not where you want to be or are meant to be, etc., etc.
But yeah, I think I experience imposter syndrome, or I don't know, or I don't know if it's. I don't know. I say it's imposter syndrome because I want it to be. I actually am just shitty at what I do, and I'm just a Peter Principle, ultimately getting promoted to my level of incompetence.
I think the outside perspective on imposter syndrome is like, oh, good. That means you're being pushed. Like, you should never, like, if you're getting comfortable, it's actually time to go seek out some imposter syndrome.
That's a good point. Well, no, but because imposter syndrome is well, I guess.
I'm not saying that you can't fix it or change it or address it or whatever. I'm not saying that like imposter syndrome is a good thing. What I am saying though is that if you keep finding yourself in situations where you feel just a little underwater, it is a
you're
good
you're going to grow until you're comfortable there.
Yeah,
you're right. I think that's actually a very fair point and realistic point, because otherwise, when you're just comfortable for a long time, then things get real.
Then you
boring.
atrophy.
Then you 3 months later, you're like, what the hell happened to the last? What happened to this summer? I didn't do any.
What am I doing with
fun
my life?
Projects? I didn't get into cursor at all in the last month and a half. What was I thinking? No, that hasn't been the case. Too. Yeah. Have you played around with any of the new models that have come out in the last few months in the vibe coding world and tried?
Yeah. Oh, the
any
vibe
experience?
I've been using Cloud Code more.
Oh yeah.
Which is like the command line version. But I've found a couple interesting tools or like packages, I don't know what you want to call them, and GitHub to sort of like stuff in there. And it is crazy powerful. As long as you give it the right prompt and guardrails, it'll just go, like, it just cooks. 20 minutes goes by and then it's like, all right, now I'm finished. Like, wow, I used to have to like chat back and forth minute by minute. Now it's like, it just goes. And then, and then I get out and check out works and make sure that it didn't create some sort of like second pillar.
So when you say it goes, what kind of duration of time is it going for? I'm curious now.
Yeah, well, I mean, whole minutes up to, I think the furthest I got was 20 before it was like, hey, I'm done.
You can have a cup of coffee and come back. That's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And now I haven't done this, but like there are people, they'll have like 14 instances running, right? Like, and they'll all have pulled down their own PR and then merge them later and stuff, just as
Mm,
if it was, you know, a large org doing coding.
interesting.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to like you got to keep the guardrails on, tell it exactly what to do. Your the more intimate knowledge you have of the code, which as a vibe coder can be
Hard
hard.
because you don't. That's that. Like, yeah, because you're not
Well, then you go back to the
as
other chat,
versed.
copy the code, paste it in, and be like, explain to me this particular module. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's good. And then GPT-5 came out.
I have yet to dabble with 5. I've heard some mixed things online. It seems it's iteratively better, not ground a change. Because for a while it felt like the speed of new models kind of was, the time between new models was kind of decreasing for a bit, and then it feels like that kind of stagnated. Or
Bigger.
is that just my own impressions?
I would say
I
that
don't know if
that's my
that's
impression too.
okay.
I don't
And
I
I
don't
wonder if
know.
they're pending some. I mean, it seems at this point we're pending some kind of technological breakthrough into the next level. It's kind of going to be some fine tuning at this point, and improving resource capacity
Yeah.
usage.
I think it's
As
efficiency.
yeah, which is good because that's certainly something we need for the technology,
Necessary.
given how capital intensive it is to get set up and established. I have some friends that work in industrial sales that go and. Have you heard of like a Granger or a McMaster-Carr? They work for some companies like that.
Fastenal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And there's a lot of those in the world, and I have some friends that work at a couple different ones here in the area. And the one thing everybody consistently says, amongst 3 or 4 that I talk to, data centers they cannot keep up with the demand. Like, some of these companies are having their best years ever, despite other industries in the U.S. kind of being down, because the data center build out is so
Intense.
rapid
Yeah.
and so intense. So I'm sure there's a lot of probably jobs that are being absorbed as they're going away from other industries into that. I wonder how durable it is. Are we in for a
Bubble.
1920s railway consolidation after everybody overbuilds and spends all this capital to build it out, and then I wonder how many of the projects they all end up being as viable, or do we have overbuilding that happens at too high of a price for what the commodity price for some of this stuff will eventually become, right? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Me too. This goes back to boom, burn Hobart.
Yeah,
It
it
really
does.
does. It's like it's necessary, right? You can't judge this. You can't look at this and be like, well, this was unnecessary. We could have seen it coming. It's like, no, booms are part of the process. Like bubbles are part of the process. It's like how we get
Exactly.
from point A to point B. It's just the duration of time between the bubble collapsing and when the thing that got built by the bubble becomes truly marketable, right?
So I think we're in that phase of the boom, right? Where we're building out a lot of capacity, and
Hyperactivity.
yeah, exactly, hyperactivity. And it might go on for a long time
It
if
might.
robotics advancements come along and give us useful applications for all this data processing. It could be a long time.
Yeah,
I don't.
I mean, if we find real world applications and companies take to it on these robot things, it's like
Mm-hmm.
you just think about your sort of like I chatted with ChatGPT a couple times today, right? That's really intermittent usage. There's no reason that robot can't run 24 hours a day. So that's 24 hours a day of basically query to the AI chips, right? In that data center.
Exactly.
And distance between robots and data centers is going to matter.
I think it was Bank of America had a report this week, or was it Chase? It's one of the two. Um, uh, Kind of doing some forecasting around, in 5-10 years, what you'll be able to effectively economically pay a robotic worker. And for $5 an hour, you'll be able to pay one robot that could replace 2 employees that would be making $25 an hour effectively.
Yeah, it's dystopian, man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So,
I mean, it's dystopian and it's also, I mean, it's both, right? Because we don't know which direction it goes in.
we don't. We really, truly don't know anything, do we?
We don't. No. I think anybody who thinks that they know for certain is wrong by default. Even if they got lucky, it's like you wouldn't be right for the right reasons, right?
That's oh yeah, that's absolutely true. Like, it's a broken clock is right twice a day,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It doesn't mean that it was actually had any prescience or any utility as being a tool. It just happened to be accidentally, lucked into that one.
Yeah.
It feels like it could be very advantageous, right? Like you have your own little helper bot at home that comes in and does all these things for you, and it should make your life better.
You hope. Yeah.
I hope. I mean, what's the worry, right? Is the worry that
It's
then
job
the
loss.
economic engine,
Yeah.
the economic engine of jobs starts to dry up, I suppose?
But like, what if? So going back to the example of like the robot's $5 an hour, the human's 25. So now you have this $20 delta per hour, and so that is money saved. Wouldn't you just go buy 5 robots?
Mm-hmm. Well, you would buy 2 robots because it's more than you're going to need because you've replaced. I don't know, like because
So
you don't.
you want to replace your wages. I'm talking about the person that's like, wow, are the robots gonna be silly? I don't
Are
know.
the
I was
are
like,
the, are
are
the
the
robots
robots
going
go?
to be 1099
Yeah,
contract
yeah.
employees?
I'm gonna lease them
That
out. I'm gonna lease them out. That's what's going on. Yeah, that's where my head was going.
Can we regulate these in such that basically corporations aren't allowed to own robots, but individuals are?
Yeah, right. Well, that's kind of where I was going. Is like not basically stuffing it down our throats, but like, is there a model with which we could draw more people into the capital class rather than the labor class, to use rough terms?
Maybe. Well, yeah, it's kind of like drone warfare, right? How much it changes
Yeah, it changes the whole entire
dynamic
landscape
of
changes.
the way of how countries can interact and how they can be effective because of the cost of what it costs to be do the job effectively. You don't need the $10 billion plane if you have a few $10,000 drones that can do the same task with the same effect.
Unless it's far away, then you still need the $10 billion plane to deliver the drones. Kinda, right? Depends on
That's true.
the landscape
True.
of the
That's true. That's true.
conflict.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
That
Yeah,
was
no.
kind of demonstrated this year in wild form.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. Yeah, what happened to Iran? Is that just went away?
What happened?
Like we were just all talking about Iran and bombing Iran, like that just stopped. Like people just stopped talking about it, and
Either they got to rebuild for 5 years or they're planning for 6 months, right? Like, I think that's the super scary thing is like they've almost been given a reason to act if they have the capacity to.
yeah, they've definitely been given a reason. That's a good point.
Because we don't know.
It's just time, right? Because it doesn't just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean it hasn't been in the works or hasn't been.
Well, it's been in the
of.
works for decades, and Israel has taken it upon themselves to make sure that the program keeps getting mucked up. And then we did Stuxnet, and that mucked it up. And then we bombed it, and that mucked it up. Like, the balance of power out there is going to be extremely important to keep nukes out of that regime. It's not even about the people or Iran as a country. It's like that regime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that's
Yeah.
how I would like to draw those lines. That might be idealistic, but that's where.
Yeah. That is idealistic, Dan. That is very idealistic.
Yeah. Okay, so moving off of that topic,
Yeah. There's nothing. I don't have anything good to say about any of that.
how are you forecasting the rest of the year? How are you staying positive? What are you telling yourself? How are you changing your chatter?
Radical acceptance has been a phrase that's been in my head a lot, Dan, because I'm going through a little bit of survivor's guilt lately at work.
Yeah,
There's been a few more instances of that happen the last couple of weeks, even.
Man,
that's been kind of sad on my front, seeing some friends go effectively.
Gotcha.
But then saying, I know I'm in a position now where I know some things that I didn't know 6 months ago, and I can't really speak about them, but those things give me some hope in that I know that things seem like they're painful, but they're changing, and ultimately maybe changing for a better, more stable thing. I was thinking more about my little theory of the compression of the saculum for the business cycle. And I really truly feel like we could be, at least for my industry, the energy industry, traditional energy at least, in a bit of a in North America, a bit of an ekpyrosis, where in a few years we're going to be much healthier, leaner, able to be very agile and profitable and value accretive in a way that we can't right now because of the way we're configured. Ultimately, we have to reconfigure a lot of things, but after a couple of years of change and some pain and rethinking how we do things, we have a chance to be in a golden age where, hey, we're set up for a few years of really successful, being able to go after business in a positive way. So we'll see. That's how I'm trying to think about it, and just knowing I can't control a lot of this, and I just have to live within it, ride the wave, and keep keep my eye on the shore or on the horizon or wherever I'm looking, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, make sure you can actually see it, not be underwater.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, keep your
That's
head
how
up.
I've described my life for a few years
Yeah,
now. It's like, nah, I can't. I don't know. I don't know which way is land.
yeah. Sometimes there's waves coming on both sides. You know which way you're supposed to be swimming towards. But
Yeah. Yeah, you've seen those
everyone's
pictures of boats. It's like, and then it's just a
yeah.
30-foot wall of water. The
Watching
ocean's scary,
videos of
man.
some of those big ships on the ocean as they're going through those, it's just how the first time you're as a sailor on a boat going through that, I would just imagine it would be the scariest thing. Or you're just an absolute insane person who loves that, and it's like the most thrilling thing. It's like, oh, this is what I got into it for. Yeah.
There's
Bring
a lot
it
of these people
on.
in the world.
Exactly, there are,
For different.
and I'm glad they exist
Me too.
because somebody has to.
Yeah.
Somebody has to do
The
that
world
shit.
stops turning the way it turns if we don't have
If we
people who
can't
love
get
these
our
things.
king crab from the
Right. Gosh.
deadliest catch people.
Is that show still airing?
Who knows?
It's always a fascinating kind of show, though. I didn't watch it much, but
No, yeah, I remember catching a good number of episodes back. That it had a lot of novelty the first couple of years it was on. It's like, what is this? But
yeah,
then like anything, it kind of okay. Yeah, they're just it's a dumb reality show.
yeah. There's some manufactured drama and the rest of it.
Yeah. Speaking of good reality shows, I don't know if we talked about this or not. Did you see the latest episode of the latest season of Clarkson's Farm yet?
No.
It's pretty good. Season 4. He's got some interesting challenges. They buy a bar. I think you would appreciate the ongoings of everything he has to do in acquiring this pub. And having worked in that for a while in restaurants, like some of the things I'm just like, yeah, no, that's not gonna. Yep, nope, yep. That of course that went wrong, Jeremy. What were you thinking? Yeah. I mean, some of it's like I feel like they manufacture his stupidity at times. Like
for sure.
It's like, oh, surely he's not that dumb, but some of it is also just like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that either.
Uh-huh.
Like, no, of course the umbrella won't work there. Why like I wouldn't have thought of that either. You have to do it and try it to learn and see what the failure mode is.
Yeah.
Without having,
I want to find some farmers who've seen Clarkson's Farm and just listen to their takes.
Yeah, my stepdad really enjoys it from his, he worked as a farmer for Purdue. I mean, not like hardcore farming like some people, but it was, he really gets a hoot out of it. But yeah, I would like to talk to people who were, who are farmers anymore? Are they just employees of large corporations? Are they large landowning estates that have thousands of acres in Iowa and Indiana, and it's like one family that owns 20,000 acres? Or
Illinois.
Yeah. Who are the farmers?
I think that's where it's moved to. It definitely wasn't that way always.
One thing that feels interesting about the Clarkson's Farm series, it's a lot of, like they talk to a lot of very local people who might only have a few hundred acres.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it interesting too, because they're also doing sheep and they've got, crops and all these different things. It's not like we do, 25,000 acres of corn.
Yeah, it's not like factory
and the next
farming,
year it's
like
soy,
we have.
and the next year it's wheat, and the next year it's corn.
Yeah, lots of damn corn, that's for sure.
Oh, subsidized.
Yeah, that's true.
Government intervention, not a market.
Wonder if that'll ever change.
I wonder too.
Come on, RFK, do something good there. That's where you can do something interesting.
Yeah,
mess up with the corn subsidies. See what kind of chaos you can. That's a grenade I wouldn't mind him throwing in the room.
Yes.
Forget the vaccination crap. Let's blow up the corn subsidies and see what happens.
Yeah.
So let's make the economics. Let's let the economics lie where they lie.
Yeah.
And see what.
Like, is
it
even economical as a fuel? Is it? I did see something in this debate about how if we got rid of high fructose corn syrup, the United States, if it only ate its own produced sugar, would have a market shortage of 65% or something like that.
That sounds right. That sounds absolutely believable. Because sugar production itself is very tough on the land, right? Like, I think if you down in Florida in the like where they used to grow a lot of sugar cane, I think some of those areas it grows in the topsoil, and it really takes a lot of nutrients out, and like eventually the land becomes kind of fallow without some sort of regenerative farming program, right?
Very well could be. I think that's the way it is with most monocropping, right?
That's true. Yeah, if you plant the same thing over and over again, I think that can screw
And
anything up.
I think the other thing that's tied to that kind of that story is like what happens in or happened in Hawaii, which is just clear the forest so we can plant cane, and then it destroys the ecology of the entire side of the
That's
mountain,
true.
kind of thing, right? And it's like, was cane the problem or were humans? It's like,
Also true.
yeah,
So 65% if we got rid of high fructose.
something like that.
What
I mean,
about
that's
medium
directionally correct.
fructose? Low fructose corn syrup?
Well, then what are you going to make it out of?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I mean, fructose is just what, two glucose molecules combined together, right?
So what? What's the point? How are you going to make
I
it?
don't know. It's just sugar. It's just. I mean, it's still just a type. It's just
Sure,
still
it's
just a
just
sugar
sugar.
molecule.
Yeah.
Why is it inherently different than sugarcane sugar? Do you have any idea off the top of your head?
Well, it's made of corn, high fructose.
Okay, so there is a difference in the way that our body processes the sugars. So high fructose corn sugar is basically a mixture of free fructose and glucose molecules. In the body, you don't need any enzymatic breakdown of the fructose and glucose,
So that
and
goes
they're
straight to your
absorbed
blood.
directly. Yeah, versus the cane sugar is a disaccharide, a single molecule of sucrose, which is one glucose molecule chemically bonded to one fructose molecule. So basically the cane sugar is a more complex carbohydrate, so your body can't as readily digest it, and so
That's a good
you're
thing.
not. Yeah, so exactly. So the cane sugar in that case
I
would
mean,
be.
unless you're actively like sprinting, that's a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which most of us are not.
yeah. There you go.
So you could make an argument. Like, I'm sure there's data on this, and I'm just armchair quarterbacking here. But like, so you can make the argument that the high fructose corn syrup consumption is more likely. Maybe it's a 5% difference. Maybe it's more than a 5% difference. More likely to aid the development of diabetes
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to get more glucose spikes in the blood, which is going to make your body react, and you only get so many of those in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Kinda something.
Yeah.
Not a medical doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess just drink Mexican Coke like RFK is going to have us all doing anyway. I mean, yeah, again, I would be for them trying to eliminate a lot of the usage of some of these things if there's true benefits to it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it would, we're getting hit on the tax dollars twice, right? By subsidizing corn that doesn't necessarily have a a marketable, a place in the market the way it does now. Medicaid, maybe both, whichever one is older Americans. Because we're definitely,
why wouldn't it be anybody getting Medicare or Medicaid, regardless of its? I think it's Medicaid is. Wait, no, Medicare.
One of them's like low income.
Medicare is for older. Medicaid is for lower income. But either way, if there's
Yes, either way. But I'm just saying, like, diabetes is mostly an older thing because your body's gotten tired of.
Yeah, but there's a higher occurrence rate of diabetes in younger population today than there was 20 years ago.
Yeah, which is just
and that's
really
probably
insane.
a lot of that's probably in the. I mean, I shouldn't say probably.
Period.
Diet and activity. Period.
Eli Lilly's cranking out the opposite drugs, though. So, put one bad thing in your mouth and then stick a different thing in your butt, and you're good to go.
Yeah, Eli Lilly is secret lobbying for extra corn syrup, like ultra high fructose corn syrup.
Diabolical. Yeah, where's the Eli Lilly office on K Street? Let's go. Let's have a conversation. We are fascinated.
I mean, I could see that though, right? Like,
I mean,
there's a world in which that, yeah, exactly. There's a world in which that makes sense economically rational for the economically rational person to do in a way.
Yeah, the cold-hearted economist would be like, yes, that exists.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The moral person might be like, "Oh, that's a little shady," but I guess. There's no room for morals in economics, though. It's just that's a fool's errand if you think there is. I think, and that's how we ended up where we are today, right? We people just finally we took the morals out of everything, so it's all just everything's kind of amoral at this point, and it is what it is, and it's like, okay, everybody's individually acting for their own good in more ways.
I was thinking about this little sentence this week and trying to figure out how to digest it or make it into a deliverable idea. So I don't know if I have.
Okay.
We are moving from an age of thinking into an age of feeling. You're going to say more.
Say more. I think Tom Morgan said something about this recently on Twitter.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well,
you're You're not the only one to put this in my zeitgeist in the last couple of weeks.
Interesting. Okay, so my thinking is like, I don't know, it's been my lifetime has been fairly rational period of time, right? Not a lot of tumultual, it's like going back to what's that book on, it's like everything's gotten better. The medical industry's gotten better. Lifetimes
Factfulness.
have gotten better. It's like, yeah, factfulness. Everything has gotten better. And a lot of it's just driven by science, and you can kind of make the argument for like more technocratic leadership. Leaders who don't necessarily stir the soup in good ways or bad. They just, kind of get things done and muddle around. And a lot of the stuff that doesn't work is sort of like fringed or whatever. But you go through a long enough period of time with technocratic ideals, and it feels stale to the average human. Rather than being able to zoom out and say like, oh, this is logical and this is good for the whole of humanity. There's something in us that needs the monster truck race, or the, like, I'm not coming up with that, like the things that make us feel good and bad. And I think this idea comes from this huge place of privilege, right? The American, there's almost not, I mean, besides not, it's like the vast majority of Americans have never seen conflict or sacrifice for country, if you will, or for identity or something like that, right? And I think, not that, like, it gets complicated real fast for me to talk about, but I think we're moving into this age where, like, we're seeing it through populism and trying to remove judgment here. It's like, but people want this, like, we've talked about it in the past, like a year ago. It's like, throw the grenade in the room, stir the pot. Like, these are things that people want now.
Yeah.
So that's my dirty, messy, like, explanation of that.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That wasn't necessarily a tidy explanation. There's a lot of, I think, truth and feelings that I sense as well. What I would add is, for people to act kind of what's irrational for the group, what is the tragedy of the commons? Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
Where you have, if there's a well in town and all the farmers are using that well, it makes more sense rationally for them all to, maybe take only 70% of what they really could use, because that keeps the well going in perpetuity. Whereas if they all go and withdraw down 100% every year, the well dries up and they have a massive drought. We haven't had that period of, as you put it, collective sacrifice or suffering in a way. Sure, there is sacrifice and suffering. Like, I don't want to minimize 100%. what anybody is, any
but
of
not
our
a large
forces have done in the last 25, 40 years, but not on the scale of Vietnam, or before that, way more, even before that, World War II. We're talking tens of millions of people that have, would lost their lives.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it even affected, that's a big, like, it affected people at home. And I don't mean like a small audience of people. Like, the whole entire country was reshaped, right? Like,
yeah, you would,
the factory making pickups started making tanks. Like, there was no way you were not part of the war economy.
Yeah, so everybody saw the coming together. Whereas here, in today's society, we haven't seen that. So you have this, I think, tragedy of the commons, where people do start acting more emotionally, and they don't because they've never felt the pain from acting irrationally. So they only act with emotion. I don't know. That's where my head was kind of at about it.
I think this it really does circle back to the beginning of the conversation too. It's like focusing too much on your own problems, and also focusing too much on the problems of people who are so distant from you and that could be, I don't know. It's really tough to talk about, but like, I do think if you just kind of condense it down to that, it's roughshod, but I think it's accurate for where we've been and where we're going.
It feels like it's part of the moment. I will say that.
Yeah.
It's part of the moment right now.
How long does it last?
5-10 years, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I mean, I think these things have these fads, unless it's a fidget spinner, that these things have some sticking power.
Well, definitely, because things are getting retooled because of these feelings.
And then you start thinking, oh, everybody's thinking that way, and so everybody starts behaving as everybody is assuming everybody else is going to behave that way, unless you have some event that pushes reset and says, reset. Oh, we're all doing this. Well, I guess we're what's that meme? I guess we're doing cooperation now. The little factory worker with the machine.
I guess we're doing cooperation now. I don't know that I'd heard that one.
oh, I guess we're doing bipartisanship again. No,
Man.
never. No, that'll never happen again. I was talking about that with one of my coworkers from Romania that's sadly leaving next week for going back to Romania.
Wow.
Yeah, thankfully, we found him a safe home.
Okay.
But we transferring him back.
That'll be a big change.
Yeah, but he was talking of, it's interesting because for, coming out of, in his lifespan there, Soviet country to, following.
One of the darkest.
They had horses and buggies when he was a kid, that type of stuff to what it is today. And it's, it's wildly changed, but he's saying also there, they had some period of where people were a little more together. Now they're seeing that's separation. Like, yeah, we've been seeing that here for the last 20 years as our society has evolved. And as you get to a certain level, that happens, I think, with things pull apart and you go from being monocultural in your society to being polycultural or bicultural, I guess, and eventually seeing what comes of that until you reform in some new
I also
structure.
think it just has to do with our phones.
Yeah, could. Very well could.
I mean, just looking at the data around Gen Z or whatever, it's like almost all the basics of, what you yearn for when you're a teen, which is, can I drive, can I date, and can I drink? It's like all three of those are gone. They're out the window because of a better alternative.
Yeah, because of an alternative. And we say that they're gone, like as though that, again, this is us looking out from our outside lens saying, well, isn't that a shame? But we're not in the moment living it. So I wonder,
going the non-judgmental route.
Is it better or worse? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, technically we don't know. But it definitely feels...
It's different. It's definitely different. And that's what we're uncomfortable with.
Maybe you're right. I would argue that these are some of the most basic things that bring us together in young adulthood.
I fundamentally agree with you. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here, but like togetherness and community, I think is something that's definitely lost in a way. And again, I was thinking about this as I'm projecting this onto Gen Z, saying, "Oh, well, you see this in the trends of how they're." It's like, but is it that I'm seeing that and projecting it back? Like it's then my own life that I'm projecting out onto them? Like, is it that my friends and I have all grown up and they've all had kids, and now I feel alone because I don't get to see and hang out with them as much, and they're in different countries around the world, and like we can't just go like, "Hey, it's Thursday, we got nothing going on tomorrow. You want to go hang out?" Like, is it that I'm missing that and then projecting that as a feeling of loneliness on Gen Z and the data that we see?
I think it's a window into the fact that that's what Gen Z is missing out on, because that is their time of life. And I think if you just create the dividing lines around millennials, we're also missing out. We are not doing the social lives that boomers were doing at our age, I would argue. I don't have data for that.
In 30 years, Gen Z is all hanging out together, the Gen Alpha, I guess, is all hanging out together, and Gen Z is like, oh, it's a shame they're all come together and be in a community. Don't they know the value of solitude?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, this is like, and this is more anecdata, right? But I know, it's like when I know someone, they travel to Italy and they have kids, and it's just like the kids are welcome. And there's lots of places in the United States where that does not feel at all like the truth. The kids, you bring them along and they are unwelcome in a restaurant or whatever. And eventually, like a family like us, it's just like, we'll just stay home. It's easier. Versus you travel to a different country that, is still fond of their children. And your children are so entertained because they've got new people to interact with here and there while you sit and have dinner. And it's like, wow, we've been sitting here for 65 minutes. We normally don't get more than 17.
So because like roaming kids is an acceptable thing in so like if a kid walks up to your table, it's perfectly like, it's just part of the course of life.
Whereas here it's like, what's this?
Yeah.
Going back to cohesiveness and community and all the fabric of society. It's like, of course we are pulling each other apart because we're not even in each other's worlds.
And I think there are some of those spaces that do exist, because I can think of a handful of places that are kind of like that, Dan, though, that have... What
do you mean?
That are built for that family experience.
Like, we're in a particular area that does have lots of those things, but like
there's a couple places in Houston that I refuse to go to specifically because they are like that, and I don't have kids, and I don't want, I'm like, nah,
fair.
You guys want to go to Cottonwood? I'm not. See ya. I'll catch up with you later. I don't have the energy for it today. But like sometimes I do, I don't know. Like they exist, but yeah, it's not the norm. It's not the standard.
Wait, what's not the standard?
like being able to have like again a place where that's kind of acceptable of the family unit, and like, oh, it's a bunch of kids walking around, and that's like there are certain places in Houston, right? Like that is, you go there and that is,
You should
well, that
expect it.
restaurant is that, yeah,
Yeah.
that is what, there's a playground, there's a big outdoor space, there's like, it might be a bar, but like this, there's all the 30 something families with their kids there. Like that's just what
Yeah.
happens on a Saturday afternoon. Those places exist. It's not, but it's not like you just go to a Chili's and it's like that, I guess. Whereas is that what it is in some other countries? It's like you go to McDonald's and they're set up for even something more interactive like that, I feel.
No, I think it's like the lack of setup. You're specifically going to like a little pasta dinner and there's no playground. It's a small little white tablecloth place.
Mm.
And I wouldn't dare take kids to something like that here. But there, it's just expected. And they'll, make it work because that's
Interesting.
that's what you do.
Yeah.
Versus sequestering populations against each other.
Yeah.
Going back to, I view it as fabric, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we make ourselves lonely in our modern lives, or make ourselves not lonely, but secluded.
I don't know, but you have that word posted all over our notes, and we're going to have to break into it at one point.
Yeah, I know.
Should we leave it there?
Never feels like the right day for that, though, does it, Dan?
Why? Because you're reckoning with your own life?
Exactly.
Okay. There we go.
I'm getting better at it, though. I think I might be ready soon. No.
To talk about it with another human being?
Exactly. The day of reckoning is coming, as they say, for us all. Anyway, yeah, I think let's leave it there, Dan. It was a good catch up. Nice to get back on the horn with you after a while and see how life has been.
Yep. Hopefully we'll keep the pace up going forward, but kind of, no promises. We're going to just do our best and pat ourselves on the back for all the appearances we get.
Hell yes. That's exactly what we're going to do, because that's what this year calls for.
Yes, exactly. All right. See you, everyone.
See you, everybody. Bye.